All right. So thank you for joining me. My name's Eric Lee with Equity Real Estate. It's good to see you guys on here. And again, thanks for being on, even when that link wasn't sent out. Okay, so I'm recording this one. Today, we're talking about working with buyers. Now, every week, we do a little bit of homework to, I call it taking a bite out of the elephant. Can't eat an elephant in one sitting, but if you spread it out long enough, you can. So we're taking a bite out of the elephant every week. Last week, we talked about working with sellers and the importance of getting your listing presentation trimmed down to where you can deliver it in 40 minutes or less, so you could be in and out of the house within an hour. We also talked about some of the marketing things that you can do for it. So hopefully you were able to beef up your listing presentations a little bit and get a little bit of practice in. Today, when we talk about buyers, it's like yin and yang. It's same coin, same business, absolutely different approach that we're going to use when we talk about working with buyers. Okay. And I have this discussion with a lot of people. A lot of people don't agree with me, and I don't care. I'm right, they're wrong. I'm big, they're little, and there's nothing they can do about it. Anybody know that quote? No? Come on, somebody's got to. Shayna, no? It's Matilda. Remember her dad, Danny DeVito, pointing at her? I'm right, you're wrong. I'm big, you're little. Oh, you guys got to get out. Go watch Matilda with your family for Christmas. Great little movie. All right, I am going to share my screen with you guys. Let's see here. All right, y'all see the thank you screen? Give me a thumbs up. Good. All right, by the way, if you have questions, comments, feedback, anything like that, there's my email, brokerericlee@gmail.com. Shoot me an email. Let me know what you'd like to see training on. This past week, I had one of you reach out to me, not in my office, and I thought it was great. You know, I mean, I'm here to help. And, you know, just coming to these trainings and reached out to me and said, hey, this is something that I'm struggling with. And that was awesome. And hopefully we're able to get you pointed in the right direction and get you some of the help that you need. We do have recordings of most of these trainings on Elevate. If you go to Elevate, go to the training tab and look for Elite Agent Training. That's all my stuff. Sometimes people ask me for copies of things, and I don't give copies of this PowerPoint out, but you do have copies of the trainings. However, last week we talked about listing presentations. I do have a copy of my listing presentation on this page in Elevate, and I do have a copy of the buyer presentation that I'm going to demo for you today. All right, so we've already talked about the homework assignment. Okay, this one comes from Oliver Cromwell. I love that it's a quote that's over 400 years old. He who stops being better stops being good. The reason why I've put that quote in here is because, again, a lot of people don't do what I coach to do when it comes to working with buyers. And I think it's just wrong. Okay, so we'll get into that, but some of the resources you have available to you. You've got full buyer's packets. So if you're new to equity, then you've got to get into Elevate and do your Launchpad training. Okay, it'll tell you all about the buyer's packets, what you need, how you find all the paperwork in .loop, how you fill it out, all of that stuff. It's all in there. So if you're brand new, there's a checklist of all the forms that you're going to need so that you don't feel totally lost. Okay, this is just a fun one. If you want to check it out, that dreampass.com, little home buyer's passport, little giveaway you can give to buyers. You've also got the buyer's presentation, which I mentioned is in Elevate under Elite Agent Training. And of course, you've got .loop. Some other states don't use .loop. Use whatever your broker recommends. Okay, here in Utah, we're all .loop, and you need to be using it. All right, let's talk about fiduciary duty first, and I'll tell you why. Okay, fiduciary duty is the responsibility of an agent toward the principal involving trust, loyalty, confidence, care, and diligence. There's those 5 things that are in there with fiduciary duty. This is all stuff that you guys learned in order to get your real estate license. None of that's new. To simplify it, your client's interests come before yours, but not to the extent that you're dishonest with another party. You don't lie. Okay, that's fraud. We don't do fraud. However, when it comes to working with buyers, I see agents violating their fiduciary duty all the time. They put their interests first. And what is their interest? They're afraid. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen really quick. And I want you guys to tell me, I don't know, you're all part of my training, so maybe I'll do it the way that I like anyways. Tell me reasons why you would go out and show homes to somebody that you didn't have an agency agreement with in writing. Because 90% of agents, that's how they operate. They go out, they show homes, hope that a client falls in love with something and will make an offer. So go ahead, tell me why you would do that. And I just want to hear it so that later on I can give you guys some different approaches and methods for countering those arguments. So go ahead.
So
Well, I'm brand. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
go ahead, Shelby.
Go ahead, Shelby.
I was gonna say I'm brand new, like brand stinking new. So I guess my experience has been I've been on Zillow. My husband and I went to look at a home. We met with a realtor at the home, and that was like our first point of contact.
Okay.
And then we ended up purchasing that home. So we signed a buyer's agreement as soon as we put an offer on it. So that's my experience from
So
being.
you saw one home and wrote an offer. Okay, cool. That happens. Absolutely. Any other reasons?
I was going to say something similar, but like I wouldn't do it because I've been trained from you from the beginning. But I guess there are some exceptions where I had a client that I was a referral of somebody that we both knew and trusted. But like our first meeting was going to be at a house because of the circumstances. And so they asked if it was okay if they didn't sign the agreement until after we met for the first time. And I said that was okay.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's good. And both of you have described a scenario where you have your first meeting is at the house that you're seeing. And that does happen. What about the people that maybe they don't want to speak up, but the people that are showing houses for months at a time without an agency agreement? Anybody in here do that? No? Okay. Well, maybe it's because you're all a part of my group, but that's what most agents do. So for you guys, that's what your competition is doing. So we're going to talk about what that means for you as well. Let me give you this scenario. Okay. I'm going to take a step back. We're going to give this scenario of how most agents act. They find out from a friend at social media, they're chatting with somebody that they're interested in buying a house, and they get all really excited because, hey, I'm a real estate agent, right? So they say, oh, that's great. Where is it you're looking? And it happens to be an area that you cover. Hey, I'm actually a real estate agent. I would love to help you out. Tell me what it is that you're looking for, and I'll send you some homes. Okay, great. Does all this sound familiar so far? This is realistic, right? Okay, so great. I get a little list of what they're looking for. I go back to my computer. I put it in. I set up some hot sheets, the automated reports that go out. I send the reports out. And what is my hope in doing all of this? Come on, we all do it. What's my hope? Why am I doing all this stuff?
Well, they say, hey, show,
Sorry.
Landon, you go ahead and go.
no, just you're hoping that they'll say, hey, show me these homes. So,
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping, right? I'm hoping that they'll be like, hey, this is awesome. Eric's doing a great service for me. We found something we like. Come show it to me. Do you know what actually happens? Have you guys ever looked at the studies? Okay, it's nearly 90% of people call the name on the yard sign to see the home. Now, how does that happen? Because it's almost the same percentage that sees them online. I mean, they almost all see the homes first online. So how come they're not doing like Shelby did and just calling the name off the sign off of Zillow and going to see it? Because that does happen. Do you know why? So we go home, we set them up on hot sheets. Do they know your value? Have you communicated your value? Do they know what a real estate agent does?
No.
No, they don't. Okay, you haven't communicated any value. All you've done is set them up on hot sheets. They can see pretty quickly, they're automated. You're their friend. Let's assume that you're their close friend, but they still don't know your value and they don't know what you do for your job. Okay, so let's say that they find something that they really like. And in your mind, you're thinking it's natural that they'll call me to go see that home. In their mind, that's not what they think. In their mind, they think, hey, I don't want to put Eric out. Okay. He's been kind enough to send us this stuff already. He hasn't asked for anything in return. We don't want to bother him. So let's just go for a drive around that neighborhood, see if it's anything we even like. And people do that. Okay. It's fun. When you're shopping for a home, it's kind of fun. You get to drive around and check things out. So that's what they do, because they don't want to put poor little Eric out, because they don't have any commitment to me. They don't know how I work. They don't want to bother me. I've already been kind enough just to send them some stuff. So they go out and they drive around and they see a house that I sent them, and there's a sign in the yard and think, you know, this really is a cute neighborhood. I like this place. You know, we should just pop in and see it. And now who do they call? They call the name on the sign, right? And what does a well-trained listing agent do? Okay, Shayna, give me a call. We'll role play this. You're driving around with James. You see a cute sign in the yard, or a cute yard with a sign in it. You got to unmute yourself. There we go. All right.
I'm the client looking for a house.
You're the client. I'm the listing agent.
Okay, so I see the number and I decide to call you.
Yeah. So you call me and you say,
Can you
we're
tell
role
me?
playing.
Can you tell me about this house on this corner? Blah blah blah.
Yeah, it's a great home, actually. I only live a couple miles away. Would you guys be interested in seeing it?
Sure.
Okay, great. I can set that up with them here in just a couple of hours, and let me confirm it with them, and I'll say 3 o'clock this afternoon. Does that work for you guys?
Sure.
Okay, great. Hey, really quick, I just need to ask you, do you guys have an agent that you've signed an agreement with or anything?
We haven't signed anything, no.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, great. I'll see you over there at 3 o'clock this afternoon.
Great. Thank you.
You see how easy that is, guys? Now, when Shannon and her husband come over at 3 o'clock this afternoon, I'm actually going to be talking to them about the whole offer process, things like that. And then I'm going to say, oh, and by the way, I'm actually doing a special right now where if I can help you as a buyer and you don't have an agent, then I'll save you $500, or I'll give you $500 towards your closing costs if you don't have an agent. Is there anything wrong with that?
No,
No, there's nothing illegal about it. And I've had agents come into my office, literally this happened. They came in and they were so pissed because it was a friend of theirs that they'd known for over a decade. And he said, my friend just sold me out for $50. The listing agent told him he'd give him a $50 gift card if he didn't have anybody representing him. And so he didn't use me. And I said, dude, that means the value. I said, you can't get mad at your friend. You got to get mad at you. You communicated less than $50 of value. You can own that. Okay. And a lot of people do. They, you know, a listing agent goes out there and they says, you know what? I'll give you 1% towards your closing costs if you don't have an agent, because then they're going to make 5% instead of just 3%. It works out for them. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. Okay. And that happens all the time. So when I just set up hot sheets and I send it to my clients, hoping that they're going to fall in love with something and call me, that's not the way that it actually works out. It only works out that way in my head, and very rarely does it actually play out that way in reality. Shayna, go ahead.
So just to go a question, not to go too far off topic, but when you said you would offer them 500 towards closing costs, what are our limits when it comes to advertising that? Because we can't advertise like that, right?
We can actually. Okay. So I'm going to be very clear here. We're talking Utah law. If you're in another state, then you can, you know, do this and not listen, because I don't know other states' laws. In Utah, you can offer your own clients, buyers or sellers, any kind of gift that you want to. When you're working with buyers, it has to be compliant with the lending rules. You know, so usually most lenders aren't okay with giving them cash outside of closing. But when you're working with sellers, any type of inducement or gift that you want to do, you can market that. What you're thinking is for referrals. And in referrals in Utah, they have to be unsolicited. So I cannot put, hey, send me a referral and I'll give you $250 gift card, which is the state limit for referrals. because now you've solicited the referral. So you can give unsolicited referrals up to $250, but you can give, you can solicit for clients with anything.
So if they were past clients and I was sending like a email out to them, it's really just about the wording. Like I can't say referral, but I could say right now my special for this month is blah, 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 and they can spread it to other people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Buy or sell with me. I'll give you a trip to Hawaii. Okay. And I've had agents do that. I've done $500 shopping sprees. I've done big screen televisions. There's nothing wrong with any of that stuff as offering that as an inducement. Again, that's Utah law. If you're in another state, check with your broker if you're not sure. Okay. So good question there. All right. So now that we know the challenge, I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. Now that we know the challenge with approaching it the way, honestly, 90% of agents, that's what they're doing. They find out somebody is interested. They start sending them hot sheets, hoping that they'll call them and eventually go out to see the home. And it doesn't work out that way. So what I'm advising you to do, we all know this, we get them pre-qualified before we show them homes, right? Every trainer says this. However, what I think you need to do is you need to have them sign the exclusive buyer broker agreement before we even get them pre-qualified. Let me back up for a second and tell you why we do this. Okay. Again, somebody comes to me and says they're interested in buying a home. And by the way, I want to talk about the fiduciary duty of this. Why do we get them pre-qualified? Somebody tell me why we get them pre-qualified before we show them homes.
It's a waste of time, everyone's time if they're not qualified. Plus, on a selling standpoint, seller's agent standpoint, I only want qualified clients coming through the home.
Yeah, especially in a market like this, their offer's not even going to get considered. Okay. Why do you know what answer most agents tell me? Why we get them pre-qualified before we show them homes? Because I don't want to waste my time. Right? Here's the problem with that. It's not about you. When we talk about fiduciary duty, your client's interests come before yours. Okay. Do we still get them pre-qualified before we show them homes if our client's interests come first? What do you think? Shelby, you're new. Are you still on?
Sorry, can you repeat that for me?
Yeah.
Didn't hear you.
So if we're putting our client's interests before ours, do we still require them to get pre-qualified before we show them homes?
I think so, because there's no point in looking at homes if you don't know what they can afford. You're
Okay.
doing your best to help them so that they don't get too interested in something that they might not even be able to purchase.
So we come to the same answer. So why does it matter? We still got to get them pre-qualified before we show them homes, whether it's in our interest or their interest. Here's why it matters. It matters because if it's all about you, then you get to decide whether or not you do it. Right? If it's about me, whether or not I'm willing to waste my time, then maybe I don't require that person to get pre-qualified. Maybe it's my best friend. Maybe it's my mom. I'm not going to tell my mom she's required to get pre-qualified before I show her homes, am I? It's just kind of weird, right? If it's about me, I get to make that choice. And so you got to stop thinking that it's about you. It's not about you. This is about them. And when it's about them, you don't get to make that choice. They get pre-qualified before you show them homes because it's in their best interest. Does that make sense? So when it's not about you, it's not your choice to take that away from them. You have to give that service to them. Same thing with the exclusive buyer broker agreement. We do that before we show them homes. Why? So that we don't get burned.
Maybe.
But that's again making it about us. Why do we show them homes for them? Or why do we sign the exclusive buyer broker agreement for them, for their sake? Because they have a right to know all of their rights. A lot of that is displayed in that buyer broker agreement. You know, how we work, how we get paid, how we get compensated, the things that we can do for them, the things that we cannot do for them. Okay, some of their rights, all of that stuff is there. And that's in their best interest to know that right up front. We want to make sure that they have copies of all the contracts. This is required by law. And this is another reason why, again, if you're in Utah using .loop, if you're in other states, you've got different software, it does the same thing. But when we send it to them with .loop, we have proof that it was sent. And that proof is there forever. It doesn't get deleted. It doesn't get lost. We have proof that they have that, which is a requirement of the state Division of Real Estate. Okay, once we've got these things done, we want to get a complete list of what they're looking for in a home. We want to have them sign their due diligence forms at the start of the process so that they know their rights. You know, forms like for your protection, get a home inspection. There's one that we've updated that was that also talks about their rights to have a home warranty. And we've added a new form this year that talks about the kinds of aggressive offers people are making. And it's kind of a warning that, hey, if you make an offer where you're waiving your due diligence period or your appraisal, things like that, that has some side effects that maybe you don't understand unless you're really, unless you have a really detailed knowledge of your purchase contract. Okay. You're not waiving your right to cancel based on inspection. You're waiving your right to even have an inspection. And people don't realize that. And their agents aren't educated and they're not telling them that. Okay. So if you've got clients that are making these crazy aggressive offers, then they need to know these things right up front. Okay. We've talked about .loop. Another thing is tracking deadlines. You have to have a good contact management software that tracks all your deadlines so that you can just pop it up and see what's going on and, know all of those things right there. Killed me one time. I had an client put $50,000 earnest money and she didn't know. She called me up and she didn't know any of their deadlines. Like, how do you have a client with 50 grand in earnest money that you don't know a deadline on? Blaine, you have a comment?
Yeah, thanks, Eric. It hasn't happened much, but more nowadays where someone will write an aggressive offer and they'll waive their right to an inspection. And then a few days later, after you've accepted their offer, they want to schedule an inspection.
Uh-huh.
How do you handle that? Can you tell them no? I mean, they can come look at it, but how do you handle that situation?
It's my client. First of all, it's always my client's choice. So I contact my client and I go over the section that they've waived in the purchase contract, which if it's due diligence that they've waived rights to everything. Okay. Any kind of visual inspection of the property, even a walkthrough, they can't have an inspector go on there. They can't even go on there. If they've waived that right, that's the seller's right by contract now to not even allow them on the property. So you educate your client about what that means that they've agreed to, and then you see how your client wants to handle it. Do they want to enforce the contract as it's written and not allow them on there? Or do they want to allow them on? It's up to your client. So just have that discussion with your client. Most people will say, you know what, let them in, we don't want to bully anybody. We don't want to play the tough guy or anything like that. We'll just let them in and we'll see where it goes. But there are other people that I've absolutely heard of situations where they don't let them in. They don't let the appraiser on the property when they waive the appraisal condition. They're like, no, you waived your appraisal condition. That means you don't get an appraisal. Okay. Does that answer your question, Blaine? It's a good question.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Back to this slide. All right. So you want to track your deadlines. You want to understand your contract well enough that you know how your client can lose their earnest money. There's very few situations where your client can, but you need to know those so that you're protecting your client. And then you need to be there with your client through the whole process and attend to the closing, whether it's legally required or not, because that's a very emotional, scary time for people. They're making a major commitment. And for you, you're doing this stuff day in and day out. Maybe you've forgotten how intimidating this process is. But trust me, it's intimidating and it's scary. If you remember your first closing, when you bought a home, you know what I'm talking about. You need to be there for them. Okay. Then, as we've mentioned with .loop, you keep we're legally required to keep the copies of the transaction for 3 years. But with .loop, we have that forever. Okay. I'm going to skip that slide really quick. If you're going to take a snapshot of anything, this is the one that you want to take a snapshot, because this is the actual steps that I want you to go in. You want to meet for a 20-minute buyer presentation. All right. Here's the script for doing that. So you're talking to somebody, you see them on Facebook. So you give them a call and say, hey, I noticed that you were, or in this case, they called off of one of your for sale signs or whatever. You say, hey, I noticed that you're looking for homes. I'm actually a buyer's agent and I have a really cool program for buyers. And I'd love to show it to you. It takes about 30 minutes, 15 to 30 minutes, depending on questions that you have. And there's great information in there. And in exchange for your time, I'll give you several $1,000s worth of coupons for local businesses filled with the kinds of things that every buyer needs, you know, whether it's, you know, you got to get the carpets cleaned when you move in. Maybe you want to replace carpets. You want to get savings on, you know, some of the lending costs, stuff like that. I've worked with some of the local businesses and they'll give all my clients these discounts, and I'll give these discounts to you just for hearing me out. Do you have 30 minutes in the next couple of days that we could chat? So that's the approach. How does that come across to you guys? Anybody?
It sounds really helpful. Sounds like you've already got someone in your corner, and if you're not in the home market every single day and you don't know the right vendors, you know, that's already a helpful resource for 15 or 30 minutes of your time.
Thanks, Shelby. I appreciate that feedback. So that's our goal. And that gets us in the home, and that's all we need. Okay, we need to get in the house and we need to help communicate our value to them. So once we get in the house, we're going to do a 20-minute buyer presentation, and I'm going to role play that starting here in just a second. When we're done with that buyer presentation, I'm going to ask you guys if you would sign an agency agreement with me. At this point, we're going to get a pre-qualification letter. Now, a lot of trainers, in fact, most trainers that I know of, tell you to get your client pre-qualified before you meet with them. I say not. Here's the reason. If they have no commitment to me and they don't know my value yet, and I say, go get pre-qualified, especially first-time buyers, people that haven't been through this process, they're going to call their parents. Who should I talk to? They're going to call their credit union. They're going to call, they're going to talk to their friends at work. They're going to get recommendations to a whole bunch of lenders that have no relationship to me. And those lenders, when they find out that they've got somebody calling them that doesn't have a relationship with any real estate agent, they're going to push their own real estate agents on them, because number one, they want to work with somebody they know and trust. And number two, it wins them major brownie points with that real estate agent so that they hope to get future referrals from that agent. So when I send them out to get pre-qualified before they're committed to me, I'm throwing them to the wolves. All right. And those wolves are all my competition. So I want to meet with them first. I want to communicate my value, have them sign the agency agreement with me. Then I send them to get pre-qualified. The only risk that I run here is they go out and talk to a lender and they can't qualify. The credit's shot, their debt to income ratios are way out of balance. And that's okay, because I've already showed them that I care enough about them that I can get them engaged in credit repair with the lender, and we'll do follow-ups every 3 or 4 months. And I'm the only person that they've talked to that treated them like a person, because everybody else said, go get pre-qualified. And when they weren't pre-qualified, nobody else even bothered to spend any time with them. They don't know how the process works. They don't know what you do for them. Nobody else would even talk to them. And I've gotten referrals from people that could never buy a home, but they referred all of their friends to me because I took the time to sit down with them and try to help them. Okay. They never got past their bad financial habits, but they valued me because I cared about them, even though they had a crappy credit score. Okay, once we get them pre-qualified, now is when we're going to search the MLS. See, this is where most agents jump to. They skip steps 1, 2, and 3. They get excited and they search the MLS for current listings and they email it to the buyer. They don't know if the buyer can qualify for any of these. They're just trying to be helpful. Okay, so I set this at step 4, and I know that everything that I'm sending them, they could purchase. All right, so I'm not getting their hopes up. They're not falling in love with things that they don't have any hope of buying. And when you make that mistake through the school of hard knocks and people fall in love with a home that's outside of their price range, it is really hard to get them to fall in love with a home that's in their price range, because there's a big difference in, $50,000, $100,000 in value and some of the things that they'll see in those types of homes. And I mean, you'll go out in a normal market. I've shown homes for 6 months for people before I started doing this, 6 months, and they couldn't make up their mind on anything. Okay, I email, by the way, that complete list to my buyer, and I tell them, here is everything on the market. I haven't filtered it. Some of these homes, you can look at the picture and they're ugly. Some of these homes, you can look at the location right away. You'll know you don't want to live there. But I want you to know that you're seeing everything on the market right now. And that's important for you, because that's going to help you make a decision when you see a home that you like. There won't be this nagging doubt, well, maybe there's something else out there. I want you to know this is everything that meets your criteria. Okay. This is very important for them to understand that when you send them this list. And then you tell them, you narrow it down to your top 15 or 20. Again, in a normal market, we would have that. In a market right now, we don't. You know, we'll find maybe 3 or 4 homes and we got to go out right away and see them. I only set up hot sheets if we go out on showings and they're not interested in anything, or it's a crazy market like this and we have to find out immediately when a home hits the market if it's in their, if it meets their criteria. We have to know about it immediately. Okay, so here I'm going to stop sharing this screen and I'm going to jump over to that this buyer presentation. All right, if you haven't ever seen this before, then this is what you have in Elevate on the Launchpad, or excuse me, in Elevate in the training tab under Elite Agent Training, you have a PDF. And all I did is I took that PDF and I put it into, I just copied it over into a PowerPoint so that it's easier for me to show people. Now, for me personally, I've saved this PowerPoint on my iPad. And so I don't ever have to print it off. I'm ready to go. Anytime somebody needs a buyer presentation, I can just take this out on my iPad and do it. Okay. So we're going to see if I can go through this in kind of role play mode, how I would deliver it to somebody. So thank you for taking your time to meet with me. I'm really excited to share with you guys my buyer packet and the program that I've developed for buyers. I've been doing this for quite a while, and I've found that a lot of buyers have questions. They're not quite sure what everybody does. So one of the first things to understand what a real estate agent does is my true value isn't in driving around and opening doors for you. That's what you see. But my true value comes from understanding contracts. And that takes years and constant study and continuing education to stay on top of how things are evolving with the market to make sure that you're protected. All right. So a lot of us, I wish for the days when you could do a spit and a handshake, maybe not the spit anymore because of COVID, but maybe not even a handshake anymore. But those simpler days when people weren't so likely to sue each other, but those are not the days that we live in anymore. Okay. And when we talk about the amount of money that it costs to buy a house, the high emotions about where you've raised your family or hope to raise your family. So we're talking about lots of money and high emotions. And if things aren't done well there, that's the perfect recipe for a very bad lawsuit. And that's my true value, is making sure that that paperwork is done correctly. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. One of the things that I want to mention here is, why do we purchase a home? And I bring this up because it is tough buying a home in this market. It's challenged. We're going to be fighting with other people. There's going to be competing offers, and we're going to lose out on a lot of those competing offers. Okay. I had one buyer that stuck with it. We probably made 20 offers before we got a contract accepted, and they just closed a couple of weeks ago. But why do we go through all of that effort? First of all, in a survey done, what's the biggest value that people find out of owning a home? Freedom. They can do whatever they want with it. They can paint the walls. They don't have to ask the landlord. And the cool thing is they actually get a payback on any of the improvements that they do. They didn't get that before when they were renting. There's also a different lifestyle that you find when you live in a community of homeowners versus renters. People just care about each other more. They're more considerate. They're more compassionate. There's a different lifestyle. There's some fantastic side effects with building up equity, keeping up with inflation. I get a lot of people saying, when's the bubble going to burst? Well, the bubble will burst when we don't have demand. Okay. And right now our demand is by far outstripping our inventory. We have much more people that want to buy a home versus the people, or versus the homes that we have able to buy. And so that bubble bursts when those things shift. But right now we have a true demand that's driving those prices up. And that's basic economics. Okay. Any economics class, it's the law of supply and demand. And that's where we're at. because of that, people that bought a $400,000 home last year gained $40,000 in equity in 1 year. That was the average appreciation in Utah, 10%. It's amazing. It's really hard to outsave that. I've had a couple of people say, you know what, we're just going to save up our money and we'll buy next year. There's not a lot of people that can save 40 grand a year. And that would just be keeping even with the market. Okay. All right. There's also benefits for retirement. A lot of people, real estate is such a solid investment that it becomes a retirement vehicle for a lot of people. They'll buy investment properties. There's some income tax benefits. So this is going to be a challenge, but it's worth it. And I want to make sure that you understand that I'm not going to give up on it no matter how many offers we have to make in order to get something done. And I don't want you to give up on it either. All right, a couple of most important things right up front. Understanding what different agents do. The first one's the listing agent. His job is to look out for the seller's best interest, to negotiate the higher price, and to have the contract language slant in favor of the seller. All right. Then there's me. I'm your buyer's agent. And by the way, when I give this presentation to somebody, I do refer to myself as their agent over and over again so that it helps them think that way. Okay. So there's me. I'm your agent. My job is to negotiate on your behalf, and it may not be the lowest price now. It may be just negotiating the price that wins the bid and gets you the home. Okay. But contract language does matter a lot. Making sure that the contract is well written, making sure that it's appealing as we're competing with other offers out there, making sure that the deadlines are favorable. You know, we got to go with shorter deadlines, showing that the sellers that we are serious and that we're on the ball right now. All of these things can make a big impact on whether or not our offer gets selected over others. And then it's very important to understand in Utah, it's legal for these agents to be the same person. And this is called limited agency because it's limited. Because now the agent cannot tell the buyers everything that they know that could help them. Because normally that's our fiduciary duty, tell you everything that we know that can help you make a good decision. But we can't tell you everything that we know now because we know information about the seller that is confidential to them, right? So I always recommend as a buyer that you have your own agent. Now, by the way, if you are showing somebody one of your own properties, then you would want to change that language a little bit. And you would want to say, you know, so one of the benefits that I have here as a limited agent is I can help you in, you know, writing up the contract. And I know exactly what the seller's needs are so that we can write up a good contract for the seller's needs. Okay. But assuming that's not the case, I'm going to say, you know, typically it's in your best interest to have somebody just looking out for you. So the listing agent contracts with the seller. Here's how this cost works out. Okay. I do recommend that you have your own agent, but people wonder, what's that going to cost me? So here's how it works. The listing agent meets with the seller and they contract to sell the home for a fixed commission amount. All right. So the seller is going to pay the listing agent a fixed amount. Doesn't matter who comes along and buys the home. It could be somebody that's represented, somebody that's not represented. Doesn't matter. That listing agent is going to make some amount. Let's say it's 6%. Okay. That listing agent then, he goes out and he puts on what we call the MLS. It's the multiple listing service. It's a private place. It's a private website where real estate agents post all of their stuff to other real estate agents. And part of the agreement of belonging to the site is when we post something on there, we have to say, I will pay anybody that brings me a buyer, I'll pay them X amount. And so that listing agent advertises on there that he's going to pay a buyer agent commission out of his commission because he's getting paid up here. So out of that 6% that he's going to make, he's offering to pay, let's say 3% to a buyer's agent. So the buyer's agents are paid actually by the listing agent. And a lot of people don't understand that. And without that understanding, they go out thinking, I'm going to do all this work and I'm going to save money. And they're not. They're not saving any money and they didn't realize it because they didn't understand how that process worked. So with no buyer's agent, you get little to no representation and the listing agent makes more money. All right. So if it makes sense that you should have your own agent, then the question is, what is my agent going to do for me? First of all, I'm going to save you thousands of dollars connecting with the right lender and inspector. And as I mentioned to you, I've got those coupons right here. And by the way, if you don't know what those coupons are, then you can stay tuned in future weeks when I do my power team training, because I talk about that there. Okay. So I'm not going to go into that here. The other value that I provide to you is immediate access to new listings. I can run reports, trigger reports that will alert you as soon as a home that meets your criteria hits the market. because in a market like this, we have to know right away. If we find out about it 2 or 3 days later, when we have time to get on the internet and search, then we miss it. Okay, plain and simple. Another thing that's important for you to understand is you're not limited in any way by having the agent. Okay, if we see a home on Zillow notoriously, at least in Utah, has very inaccurate information. It's all based off of whatever is publicly available, and Utah is a non-disclosure state, so a lot of our information is not public. So we'll get a lot of inconsistencies with Zillow. But if you find it on there, great. We can see if it's a real listing, if it's active. Sometimes, like I said, their information is bad. And if so, we can go see it. There's no restrictions there. If it's a for sale by owner, no restrictions. We'll go there. And again, since there is no listing agent paying the commission, I'll talk to the for sale by owner about just covering the buyer agent commission, help them understand how they're going to still be saving money because they don't have an agent representing them. And again, usually there's no cost to you in that. And then the other thing that I can do is when we find a home that we like and we want to make an offer, helping understand what a good market value for that is. You know, how high should we bid? What's reasonable? We don't want to get too crazy. All of that stuff, I can help you do that because I have the tools that gives us access to that information. So everything that we're doing is an educated offer. And then of course, I'm going to be there, as I've mentioned, aiding in the contract negotiations. And I'm actually there with you through the entire process. Okay. Even after we've gone under contract, all the way through that process of inspecting the home, you know, all the way up to through closing, I'll be there with you and make sure that the closing documents accurately reflect everything that we've negotiated for you. So let's talk about the process of making an offer. First of all, it's a legally binding contract. And I don't say that to scare you, but I do say that to make sure that you understand how important it is. Every agreement has to be in writing. Okay, one of the biggest challenges people get into when they don't have a good agent in their corner is they'll get in side discussions with the seller and they'll say, hey, are you planning on leaving that fridge? And the wife's not home, but they're talking to the husband and he says, sure, yeah, we'll leave the fridge. But then when the movers come 4 weeks later, the husband's at work and the wife's directing the movers and she's like, load it up. It didn't get put in the contract. Okay, because we just had this friendly communication and that doesn't work. Okay, we have to get everything in writing. That's my job to make sure that happens. So I need to be involved in all of those communications, making sure that there are no side deals being made, things that could potentially get you in trouble with loan fraud. That kind of stuff happens as well. It's a big deal. People take it serious, and that's my job to look out for you in that. Okay. All right. Earnest money. Typically, when we make an offer, $1,000 is minimal. It used to be typical. Now it's closer to probably $5,000 as a minimum for this market, but I've seen people still get away with $1,000 and getting offers accepted. All right. I want you to understand that your earnest money is protected while we do inspections. It's called our due diligence period. And we hold this earnest money with a third party. We usually hold it with the title company, and they'll hold that for you at no charge while we go out and do our inspections. Now, our inspections, I always recommend we get an inspector, and they crawl through the crawl spaces. They get up in the attics. They test every outlet. They check, they run the dishwasher, they run the stove, they make sure that things are working, and you get a very detailed report for that. And usually that costs $300 or $400, and they ask to get paid at the time of the inspection, whether you buy the home or not. All right. And then the last thing in here is a home warranty. And usually I can negotiate a home warranty for you, or I could even offer a home warranty as a closing gift to you. And what that does is it covers the major items in the home for the first year: heating, plumbing, electric, cooling, all those big expensive components. I can do that for you as a closing gift. So let's talk about what's happening behind the scenes. All right. We've talked a little bit about what I do, but behind the scenes, there's other people working. The title company, I've mentioned them, they hold their earnest money. They are required to be involved because they are offering title insurance. It's one of your closing costs. It's required of you by the mortgage lender that you have title insurance. So you provide title insurance to the lender. That basically ensures that you have clear ownership to the property. Nobody else can claim ownership from you. Okay. So I say I order this at no cost to you, meaning that there's no upfront cost until we close. You know, these are closing costs and you would pay that at closing. But if we decided that, you know, after our due diligence period or something, that this home wasn't right for you, there's no charge for this. So they are going to be doing the researching in the background. We've talked about the home inspector. He's going to be doing his job. We've got the lender, the underwriter, and the appraiser. And they're all going to be gathering information from you, going out to the property, determining the value, making sure that all your documentation qualifies for you for the loan. One of my jobs is to coordinate daily or weekly with all of these different people, making sure they're getting their job done, and they're getting their job done by the deadlines that are in the contract. Okay, so I get them copies of the contracts. I follow up with them regularly, making sure that they're doing what they need to do to get there. And that becomes very important, especially in a competitive market, because if you miss those deadlines, there's a really good chance they've gotten other competing offers that they can move to rather than extend deadlines for you. So let's talk about the loan process really quick. It's not scary, but we do want to get this out of the way right up front so that anything that we look for, we know, number one, that we can afford it. And number two, we know what our payments are and that we're comfortable with those payments, because this becomes very important in our negotiation strategy later on. Okay, so we got to have this information in hand. So the first step is a pre-qualification interview. And usually this is 10 or 15 minutes over the phone with a mortgage lender. Some companies even do it online, or you can go in and meet with people in person if you want to. And from this, we get you pre-qualified, making sure we know what you can afford and what your payments are. And then this process kind of gets put on hold. Okay. And we go out looking for homes, and, you know, we get you under contract, and then this kicks into high gear. I get a copy of that purchase contract to the lender. They now have to go out and verify that you still have your job. They're going to verify the income that you have. You know, they're going to go through all this documentation that you gave them, and then they're going to submit that into the underwriter. And the underwriter is going to come back and ask for more documentation. I only put this in here because it's scary. Like, oh, what's wrong? And it happens to everybody. You know, we submit stuff to the lender. Lender comes back and says, I need a little bit more. Okay, I put this in here so that you don't freak out when the lender comes back and says, I need a little bit more. Happens to everybody. The underwriter goes through, approves everything. Then they draw documents. And I put these steps in here because each of these steps takes time. You know, when we say, okay, we got to draw docs, that's 24 hours later or 3 days later or something like that. So when they get the documents drawn, we go in and we do what we all call closing. In the contract, it calls it settlement, but that's where we go in and sign the paperwork. Now, one of the important things for you to understand is that when you go and close, like I've seen people pull up in U-Hauls to a closing, expecting that they get the keys and they go and get their new house. And what has to happen after closing? It has to fund and record. Okay, recording means funding is that your loan comes through, that pays off the other people, pays off all their liens, everything that's outstanding, so that you have free and clear ownership of it. And once it's been funded, then the title company goes and records it at the county recorder's office in your name. Now you're the official owner. Now you have access. So people that don't understand this, they'll schedule a closing maybe on a Friday, anticipating they'll have the weekend to move, and it won't fund and record. Even though it closed Friday, it won't fund and record until Monday. And that can be very discouraging just because you simply didn't know. Okay, you didn't know what to expect, so you set your closing for Friday when you could have set it for Thursday and had everything work out okay. So part of my job is to make sure that all of those little details are handled, things that you wouldn't even consider. I try to make sure that those are handled. So here's the bottom line. I'm going to save you thousands by connecting you with good industry experts. I don't get any kickbacks from these people. That's illegal. I just connect you with good people because that means you have a good experience. And I want you to have a great experience so that you'll refer me to your friends and family. You got a full-time team dedicated to helping you find the right home. We've talked about the negotiation process. I'm a certified negotiation expert, and then I'll follow up through the whole process and be with you through closing. So what do you guys say? How do you feel about me being your agent? And that's my closing script, by the way. How'd you feel about me being your agent? Feedback. Jen gives me a thumbs up.
You're hired.
Blaine liked it. Shelby's clapping or smacking me in the face. Not sure. Okay. So would anybody not hire me off of that? It won't offend me. People are different. Okay.
I guess I have a question because I was recently having this conversation with a bunch of family members. And I don't know if we're allowed to talk about different companies on here, but they were talking about the benefits of going with Homey and how, you know, for them, one of them has done a lot with real estate, and they felt comfortable and they just wanted someone to do the transaction paperwork for them basically, and just talking about how great it was that it saved them thousands of dollars. And I wasn't quite sure how to respond to those comments. I know my own experience of going with Homey and then going with someone in equity, and they were completely different experiences. So I tried to share that, but they were still really convinced that saving the money was better than having that representation.
Yeah. Okay, so first of all, this is a private training group, so we can talk about anybody that we want to. Be very careful when you go onto social media and trash other companies. Number one, you could be sued for slander. It's also against the code of ethics, so there's problems with that. But in a private training group, it's okay to talk about other companies. So you're just fine asking that question. I think, first of all, sharing your own story is one of the most powerful ways to do it. And as you have more experience in business, you'll have more stories to share. But there will always be a group of people. And I've always thought maybe it's the bottom 10% that only care about the money. Okay. And you'll know these people. Okay. They don't care about service. They don't care about value. Hey, whatever's cheap, give me the cheapest. On the opposing end of the spectrum, there's probably the top 10% that only want the best, right? They want name brand everything. They know what value means. Okay. It's not just a fancy logo to them. They know the difference between really high quality clothing or a high quality car or something like that. And it's different. And that's all that they'll get because they know the value of that. And then there's the 80% of the people in the middle that don't know. Okay. And those are the people that we need to sway one way or the other. And if we can convince them that value is important, they'll work with us. All right. But that bottom 10%, you'll never convince. So if you know right away that person's in the bottom 10%, you can be as aggressive as you want to be. I mean, we charge $4.99 a transaction. There's a $60 client fee. So say, you know what, I'll do it for $1,000. You give me 5 people, you give me 5 referrals, people that I can contact, or at least even expand my database. I'll do it for you for $1,000. Okay. But you're going to be, and you could even say, I'm not going to follow up with your lender. You're going to need to do that. You're going to need to do this. What we're required by law is negotiating and making sure that the contract is final and that we're there at closing, or at least that we reviewed the closing documents and made sure that they're accurate. So if you wanted to do the bare bones that law requires, that's it. It's making sure that we're negotiating, we're providing the proper forms, and we're there at closing. So it's up to you how you handle it in between there. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that does. That's really helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So here's the bottom line, guys. When you use this approach, first of all, you all said that you would hire me. Nobody said they wouldn't. But do you feel like I have more value than you understood before? Now, you guys are all real estate agents, so you knew all this stuff. But John Smith, in the public eye, he doesn't understand any of those things that we just went over. And I've heard so many times of where I've gone out and done a buyer presentation. They said, well, we've actually had an agent showing us homes for 4 or 5 months. The worst I heard was 6 months. He'd actually written several offers for him. And I'm like, are you sure this guy didn't have an agency agreement? They're like, no, we didn't sign anything. But they always say to me, so-and-so never took this kind of time with us. And I'm thinking, so-and-so showed you homes for 6 months. He's probably taken 90 hours with you. And I just spent 30 minutes. But it's the value of the time. They don't value an Uber driver. They don't value automated reports that you're sending them. They value somebody that is in their corner, helping them through a scary, intimidating process. And when you become that person, you solve a lot of their problems. They know that you're somebody that they want to have help them across that finish line. Okay. So this is why I always do a buyer presentation first. And if I am going out to meet with them at a home, I say, great, let's meet out there. By the way, I have a really quick buyer presentation. We'll take 10 minutes because I want you guys to understand my value. And if they're just calling about one of my listings, then I don't have to do that. Okay. I have a fiduciary duty to my seller to show them that home anyways. But if these people are calling and I ask them over the phone, do you have a buyer's agent? They say no. I say, great, we can meet out at this first home. But before we go see homes 2 through 4, because I might, usually I'll ask them if they call about one home. I'll say, you know what, let me see if there's 2 or 3 others out there that are similar to this, so that you can kind of get a feel for the market. Would you like to see 3 or 4 homes that makes your drive time more valuable? Sure. Okay, great. I'll try to schedule those. By the way, at the first home, I want to make sure you understand the process that we're going through and the value that I provide. Are you okay with that? And we'll just take 10 minutes and we can trim this buyer presentation now, go through it really quick. You can do it, in the kitchen, you can do it out in the car, whatever. And I have had, I think once or twice is all in my career where somebody said, nope, won't sign with you. I've got 5 other agents. They're all out looking for a home. Whoever finds the property first wins. And I said, well, I don't work that way. Well, everybody else does. So I'm not signing a commitment with anybody. I said, okay, then I can't help you. What about the other 3 homes we were going to see today? Sorry, can't help you. And you guys are thinking, geez, Eric's an asshole. And I'm thinking, you know what? Eric has professional boundaries. I don't go out and serve people for free. This is my job and I do this to make money. And I do this because I have an obligation to provide for my family. I don't have an obligation to show people houses for free. Okay. I have an obligation to show my own listings. That's it. So be professional, folks. Hopefully this has helped you today. All right. Love you guys. We will have training next week. And then after that, I think we're into Christmas time. So Merry Christmas season. Hope you all enjoy shopping. And hopefully this was a good training for you guys. Your homework this week, work on that buyer presentation. Make sure you can deliver it in 15 or 20 minutes, get it into a streamlined format, whether that's an iPad, if you like paper, great. You've got that in Elevate. But make sure that you can deliver that pretty quick and that it's easy for you. All right. Good.
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 All
See you
right.
next week.
Take care, you guys.
Thanks.
Thanks, Eric.
Bye.
Bye.